All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the April 26, 2023 meeting of the Form-Based Code Advisory Working Group. We are meeting this evening virtually as an advisory group to the county manager. We are legally authorized to hold this meeting virtually based on the laws of the General Assembly and the county board's authorized operational procedures. I want to sort of orient everyone to our virtual environment again. We'll be holding its Teams through a Microsoft Teams link. The Teams link is available on the OG page, the county events calendar, and the top of today's agenda. Additionally, there's a dial-in option if you wish to choose those. If anyone loses internet connectivity during the meeting, please reconnect with us by phone. Please keep your phones and devices muted until you are called upon. Turn off sound to any other devices around you to minimize interference. For everyone joining us on Teams, please turn off your video feed. It'll be appropriate to turn it on in a moment. I'll let you know. When called upon to speak, you must unmute yourself by clicking on the microphone icon that's located in your meeting command bar. We do not have the power to unmute you. If you are calling in on the phone, please use *6 to unmute yourself. The meeting chat is active for participants who need technical assistance only. The meeting chat should not be used for discussion, public comment, questions on the agenda, requests for more information. All public comments must be shared verbally for the record during the assigned public testimony period, please, which will happen at the end of the meeting if we have anyone, but we rarely don't on OG. If you wish to be recognized to speak, I ask that you turn on your video or raise your hand, and I will get to you at the most convenient time. And I believe, lastly, today's meeting is a public forum. We will be recorded. The recording will be posted on the county website. All information associated with today's meeting, whether written or spoken, is subject to the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. And with that, I think I'll be able to get to our agenda item this evening, which I believe is first a county staff update, followed by a presentation and an agenda item. I do want to let everyone know that this will be my last meeting as your chair. It's been a pleasure. But joining us this evening is Commissioner Daniel Weir, who will be taking the reins at our next meeting, which will be May 10th, but we'll talk about that later. And with that, I believe, Olivia, are you going to kick us off?
So I think I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Melissa Danowski. She's going to give a brief presentation and then pass it off to the applicant.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. So one moment while I pull up the presentation. Okay, can everyone see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Just one for a second. Okay, so thanks for having me here today. I'm Melissa Danowski, and I'm the General County Project Coordinator for Barcroft. Even though I'm the overall coordinator for the county, there are different staff leading different aspects of this project. So I do have with me Mark McCulley with Arlington Economic Development, who is leading the Master Financing and Development Plan aspect of the project, or the long-term planning for the site, as well as helping with the initial renovation project coordination. And the Gyre Lynch team is here, of course, to discuss their use permit application. But before getting into the use permit discussion, I wanted to refresh everyone's memory on the Barcroft project and the updated process to move forward with an initial renovation project. So back in December 2021, Gyre Lynch purchased Barcroft Apartments with the assistance of a $150 million loan from the county and about $160 million from Amazon. And the units were restricted up to 60% AMI for 99 years, which is the longest affordability term in the county's portfolio. Since the time of acquisition, Gyre Lynch had worked on their Master Financing and Development Plan, which was submitted to the county on October 29th, 2022. And the Master Financing and Development Plan, or MFDP for short, is a high-level overview of some of the planning, land use, and affordability concepts. So county staff is now in the process of reviewing the MFDP and long-term planning concepts that would go through public engagement process and ultimately county board consideration. But as county staff and Gyre Lynch continue to work on long-term planning for the site, Gyre Lynch has agreed to move forward with advancing an initial renovation project of approximately 100 homes at Barcroft Apartments, and I believe it's exactly 93 units. So this will allow Gyre Lynch to begin to deliver renovated, upgraded homes for existing Barcroft residents, while providing enough time for Arlington County staff and Gyre Lynch to continue to work on the long-term planning and recommendations. And Gyre Lynch team will be discussing this in a little bit more detail, but the renovations will include items such as updated bathrooms and kitchens, new in-unit laundry, as well as upgrading the HVAC and other systems. And for the initial renovation project, Jerry Lynch is considering buildings that are part of the existing neighborhoods form-based code conservation area and are not envisioned by either the county or Jerry Lynch for redevelopment, regardless of the ultimate plans for the property. And there will also be a community engagement process with this initial renovation project. Jerry Lynch will host resident meetings to ensure that the Barcroft residents are informed of renovation plans and can provide feedback and ask questions. In fact, they just held a meeting with the impacted residents a couple days ago, informing them of this initial renovation project. And Jerry Lynch will also meet with community stakeholders and commissions consistent with the county's use permit and affordable housing development processes, which of course includes the Form-Based Code Advisory Working Group. And in terms of the resident notification and tenant on-site relocation process, Jerry Lynch remains committed to the resident-first approach. So all details about the relocation plan and renovations impact on existing residents will be communicated to residents early, often and in a variety of ways. And per the county's relocation guidelines, the Jerry Lynch team will be required to complete a tenant relocation plan before any planned renovation work. Residents may need to be temporarily accommodated on the property in a similar unit while the work to renovate and upgrade their home is completed. And on-site relocation services will be provided by the Jerry Lynch team at no cost to the residents. In all cases, the Gate Hudson property management team and Jerry Lynch will ensure information is shared with residents to give them time to fully prepare for any disruption, including 120-day notice. And they will also provide one-on-one attention to address specific resident requests and concerns. So to stay informed on the overall process, you can visit the Arlington County website and search for Barcroft Apartments. And that's just kind of the introduction to this item. So I can turn it over to back to Stephen or the applicant team.
Thank you, Melissa. And I want to before we turn to the applicant, I want to just first make everybody know. Let's hold our questions till the end of the applicant's presentation, and then as always, I want to first take personal responsibility for the fact that you all did not receive this information as early as we would have all liked, but that was part of the residents' first policy of trying to let sure that all of our residents knew this first. So the late timing of the materials, Linda, hands up right here. So this is the guy to blame before anyone else. So that's the reason we did that today. With that, Lauren, I believe you're going to speak for the applicant today, and I'll let you go ahead. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Chair Hughes. Let me bring up my slides real quick. Hi, good evening, everybody. My name's Lauren Riley, and I'm with Walsh Colucci. We represent the applicant here, Jerry Lynch Real Estate Partners, and I'm joined tonight by a few Jerry Lynch team members. We have David Hildy, Greg Ward, and Alice Hashman here. And as Melissa mentioned, we recently filed a form-based code use permit for the initial renovation phase of Barcroft. And so we're here tonight just to give you a very brief introduction of the project. We anticipate working with county staff and the HALRB on the proposed design in the coming months, and then we will return to you with some updates and some more information later on. But I've got a few slides here just to orient you to Barcroft and then dive in more specifically to the form-based code use permit. And here's just an overview of how Jerry Lynch came to the property, where we're at now. Melissa went over a lot of this, so I'll just say that while that master finance and development plan is under study, in the interim, Jerry Lynch really wants to jump on board and start renovating and repairing some of these older garden apartment units within the complex. So we're starting with 93 units in 5 buildings that are located at the intersection of South 4 Mile Run and George Mason Drive. They're within the neighborhood's conservation area and not anticipated for redevelopment. And then here's a map you've all seen probably many times over the years. It's showing you the locations of the commercial code and the neighborhood's code along the pike. And you can see the Barcroft site there outlined in blue. You can see a part of it is located within the commercial code, but much of it is located within the neighborhood's form-based code. And zooming into the neighborhoods code, where you can see the Barcroft sites located in the central sub-area regulating plan. Some of it is recommended for redevelopment, and then much of it there in green you can see is designated as a conservation area. And this area was created in order to preserve historic areas and also to incentivize the creation of affordable housing in exchange for additional height or density for projects that preserve historic features and traditional design elements. And like I said, while other areas of the site are anticipated for redevelopment, this application is very limited in scope to just these few buildings here at the corner of South 4 Mile Run and George Mason Drive, located in the conservation area and not slated for redevelopment. And I thought I'd just give you a little bit of history about Barcroft. This area is historically significant because those existing 59 garden-style apartment buildings were all constructed in the 1940s and 1950s, both during and after World War II, in order to relieve some housing shortages in the region. These buildings are good examples of mid-20th century garden apartment buildings, and they're designed in a more simplified colonial revival style. Development across the site was constructed in 2 phases. So phase 1 came in the early 1940s. And the notable features there were brick exterior walls, slate roofs, and ornamented entry surrounds. And then came the second phase in the later 1940s and early 50s. It's more of a modified garden apartment style. It has larger parking areas, reduced landscaped courtyards, asphalt roofs, and more simplified entry surrounds. And here's a visualization of that history of Barcroft. You can see there phase 1 outlined in blue, and then phase 2 outlined in red. And then these buildings have then been color coded in order of the year that they were developed. And you can see that the project area there circled in red is a part of section 3, which was constructed in 1943 and 1944. And I'll note that the form-based code use permit project area is just limited to this portion of section 3 that is north or page left of South George Mason Drive. And here's an aerial view of the Barcroft site outlined in yellow there, with the project area highlighted in red. And as I mentioned, the project site's only a portion of section 3, these 5 buildings, and they're known as buildings 22 through 26. Here, some existing photos of these buildings. These are buildings 22 and 23. They're set back further off 4 Mile Run. And then here's buildings 24 and 25. These are there at the corner of South 4 Mile Run and George Mason Drive. And then lastly, building 26, which is further east there along George Mason Drive. With this applicant's use permit, oh, I'm sorry. Give me just a second, see if I can stop that from flickering there. My apologies. There we go. So with this form-based code use permit, the applicant's not only proposing to renovate and repair these older garden apartment buildings, but also, as you can see here, proposing some rear building additions that will provide more family-friendly units. There's 93 units on the site today. They're all 1 and 2 bedroom units. And so with this proposal, the applicant will construct rear building additions on buildings 24, 25, and 26. And they'll be converting some existing 2-bedroom units into 3 and 4-bedroom units. And these rear additions were encouraged by county staff in order to bring more affordable family-sized units to this area. And I think, as Melissa mentioned, all 93 units will be provided as committed affordable housing units. And also, as you can see there highlighted in green, we'll also be adding a landscape courtyard there behind building 22 to provide additional gathering space for residents. And here's our laundry list of all of the renovations and repairs and additions that Gyra Lynch will be performing on these buildings. You can see we're doing things like pointing up the brick, repairing the roofs, replacing some non-original fixtures with more architecturally compatible fixtures, as well as constructing those building additions to provide those larger unit sizes. And then for those items highlighted in yellow there, those are ones where we'll be requesting a modification of the form-based code conservation area standards. And I'll speak a little bit more on that in just a minute. But I did want to show you all what a typical renovation and building addition would look like here. And this is the typical floor plan for building 26. You can see those 2 building additions there highlighted in yellow. they'll be converting those existing 2-bedroom units into 3-bedroom units here. And then here's a typical building section. You can see the front facade where we've noted some of these renovation and repair items, repairing the roof, cleaning and repointing the brick, replacing some of these light fixtures. And then on the rear of the building, you can see these 2 proposed additions there outlined in yellow. And here's another view of the elevations from the side of the buildings. You can see where these additions fit in. And then lastly, building sections. You can see that these additions will be in the top 2 floors of the 3-story building. You can see how they relate to those existing structures. And then to summarize our application, we're requesting a Administrative Regulation 4.1.2 use permit to allow those building renovations, repairs, the building additions, and that landscaped open space that I just talked about. We'll also be requesting a modification to some applicable site regulations like parking, setbacks, lot coverage, etc., to permit those existing buildings and the additions to remain as is. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we'll also be requesting a few modifications of the conservation area standards. And these modifications are actually necessary in order for Gyre Lynch to meet certain Virginia housing requirements for affordable housing tax credit financing applications. So we'll be working in the next few weeks and months with historic preservation staff and planning staff on those modifications to make sure they're historically, they're architecturally compatible with those existing buildings. That concludes our presentation. So thank you all for your time. We look forward to engaging with you and HALRB in the coming months. We anticipate that we'll be back before you in just a couple months with an update and some more information.
Thank you, Lauren. And is anybody else in the applicants who want to speak? Or I think we're good. I think we're good, but I just want to make sure I give that opportunity. You did a great job, Lauren.
Thanks.
All right. With that, let's turn it over to any questions we have out there for anything for the applicant or for staff. Hands up, please. And then we'll call you as we have questions. Anything out there? Questions? Linda, I see you first up the bat. Linda, please.
Have you all been to Hallarb yet? Because of the modifications that you're requesting, have you been to Hallarb already, or are you going after us?
And coming back. Let's turn that over to staff. Olivia or Melissa. I don't know which one you use. Olivia.
Mark or Melissa?
Okay, there.
Yeah, we are going to HLRB several times over this process. We will be coming back to OG later this summer. So this is really informational. I think the more deeper dive in the proposal will happen later in the summer after we've gotten some feedback from HLRB.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Linda, you don't want to give them any architectural advice before HLRB gets there?
I haven't had a chance to look at any drawings. So that's, I haven't had a chance.
If you do, make sure you send them to Lauren. I'm sure she'd be curious, but it was my fault because we wanted a resident first policy. So
absolutely, the residents come first.
And they were informing people, I suspect, probably maybe yesterday. So trying to get the door-to-door on that. So
yeah, I can only imagine the extensive outreach that you all have to make on a constant basis with considering the sheer number of people. As somebody who lived at Barcroft for 4 years, I appreciate everything you guys are doing. I really do. Thanks, I do have a question in general, as somebody who did live there. There are a number of basement apartments. Can you talk about are there any basement apartments a part of this group, or in general, are there things that we should know about, changes to, improvements to the folks who are living in the basement apartments?
Sure, Mr. Hughes, I could take that one. And David and Alice are on the line as well. There are some basement apartment units that are included within these 5 buildings. They will be renovated, as Melissa said, with upgraded kitchens, laundry units, etc. And I'll hand it to David or Alice to chime in a little more if there's more information on that.
Yes, Linda, it's great to hear that you're a former resident of Barcroft. But yes, there are some basement units which we will be, as Lauren said, we will be refreshing those just like we will any other unit. And then there are definitely some basement areas that are currently used as laundry storage, which we would keep as storage. And as Lauren mentioned in the beginning, we're proposing all in-unit laundry, so those would be just converted to storage. But we wouldn't be adding any new basement units.
Is there a way to bring more light in to any of those? Because of the terrain, I certainly remember the basement apartments at the bottom of the building that I lived in on 4 Mile Run, and I'm just curious, is there a way, since we have to deal with all the rules about the conservation area, is there a way to still make it compatible with the historic nature and yet bring in some more light to some of these apartments based on the topography that each of them have?
Right.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Yeah.
I don't know off the top of my head, but I know that that's a good comment. I know that some of the basement units I know of are partly exposed already, so I don't know if in this section we have that condition or not, but we'll definitely make sure we look into that and have an answer for you next time we come back.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Linda. And David, could you mind introducing yourself?
Yes.
We're all familiar with Lauren's. She comes to us frequently.
She's here a lot, right? I'm just tagging along. David Hildy, VP of Development with Gyra Lynch, and I oversee the Barcroft project for our company.
Thanks.
And I also have two others on the call here, Greg Ward and Alice Hageman, who are also development team members managing the renovations.
All right, Greg and Alice, welcome. And David, we know everyone will become very familiar with you over time, just like we are with Lauren, so we have no doubt.
And
Linda,
Linda, a lot of
email
time.
address.
We've done this many times.
and Linda, I agree with you. I think getting some more light in there would be great, but I think it's incredible. I read in the presentation today that they are bringing in unit laundry, which is just a huge deal, I'm sure, for many of the residents. It's my wife's biggest beef on one of the Pike apartments we lived in. Ed, then Michelle. Ed, please.
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you for being here. I like what I see so far. I just want to check. I did not see on the map any of the bus stops that are on the larger property. Is there a bus stop included in this initial phase of development?
So I think Ed, your question was about bus stops in the changes or anything with respect to streetscape improvements. Is that correct, Ed?
That's the first question. Yes.
Okay. County staff, I think Melissa or Mark, I know I saw on the presentation today, looking through the drawings, that there were no streetscape improvements. Can we have a confirmation for that from county staff?
Yeah, I think there is a broader study of South George Mason, which may address some of those issues. I think we're working closely with DS as part of the master financing and development plan to identify where the correct location for transit stops are. But as part of this use permit, we are not anticipating adding that infrastructure until that holistic view is taken of where transit goes on the site.
Okay, well, my comment would be that on the site, on the property, you have these beautiful old bus stops. There's one in Columbia Pike. I don't know where else there's one, but hopefully they're going to be maintained on the property as is.
So as part of the master finance development plan, and I'll let David and Lauren also speak to this, we are certainly a lot of discussion about the historic bus stops as part of the overall plan for the site. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, Ed, we also know we love those historic bus stops, and the current plan is to we're studying how do we keep those with the new development going around them. But that will be something that that's what we're working on as part of the master plan and those new development areas that we'll be having further discussions on.
Well, I'm elated to hear that at least you're looking at that, and hopefully they can be kept. The other question is, I saw that you're going to have to pick up some of the walls from your existing heating source. Could you make a comment about what the heating source is being changed from to what it's going to?
So I think you said what systems are we changing to the MEP? So currently there is a boiler system for hot water, and then through wall AC units. So we would be removing those through wall AC units, matching the brick, putting it back to brick facade. And the heating, we would be abandoning the boiler systems, and then both would be provided from, I believe, Alice, to be specific, some sort of heat pump system that would be, again, individually controlled by the residents. So we're going away from the boiler and PTAC units into more of a kind of less invasive, individually controlled heat pump system.
It sounds very good to me. I'm finished.
Thanks, Ed. Michelle, then Betty. If you can, drop your hands if you don't have follow backs.
Thanks. I just really had a quick question. I also didn't have time to really look at the plans, but could you, I think it was Melissa who said there was a meeting with the residents recently. I'm just sort of curious. I know it's like a resident first policy. I'm just kind of curious about how the residents are, a lot of your language was like, we informed the residents that we're doing this, and I know it's a residents first policy. Could you just like, let me know sort of if they have concerns or how that part is going, to make sure it's happening with them and not to them? I don't need a long explanation, just a minute or so. Thanks.
No, I mean, just, first, maybe broadly speaking, since we acquired the property, we really spent most of the first year doing events with residents, getting to know them, engaging them, getting feedback, which to inform our MFDP submission in October. So we had lots of events, lots of great interaction with the residents. A lot of them, interested more about what's going to happen with their rent and things like that. But I think now that we have a specific project, and this was we knocked on every door last week. We invited them all to an event on Monday, and Monday I think went really well. Especially when we mentioned the ending unit washer and dryers, there were a lot of smiles in the audience. So right, Stephen, you know how the people generally respond. So no, it went very well. Again, we're trying to over communicate. We know this is a disruptive process, but also an exciting one for them. And I think we're trying to also communicate that. So again, we'll continue to meet with this group. We have a specialist a group that specializes in these type of transfers and temporary locations that is fully engaged to work one-on-one with residents. And as Lauren mentioned, we're paying for moves and trying to communicate all this to them to kind of get them all comfortable with it. But that is one of our main priorities here, is take care of those residents that we already have on our property.
And Melissa, do you want to speak at all to the tenant landlord relocation housing review that goes on as well?
Yeah, there will be a required tenant relocation plan, but I think what I was going to chime in on is we also have tenant relocation staff that are going to be looped in and tied into this process, and who have lots of experience with this, who will also be helping the Gyre Lynch team as the initial renovation project gets underway. And just to reiterate, the relocation will be on site. So I think there are maybe some details to be worked out, but all the residents will be, when they need to move, it would be to another unit on the property.
Okay, Michelle, does that answer your question? Do you have any follow-ups?
No, that takes care of it now. Thanks, Steve.
Okay. Betty, and then Linda, I see, is back. Betty?
Hi, just a really quick question. What percentage or what number of these units that you're fixing up will be made to be wheelchair accessible?
In this first phase, none of the units will be, given this is a very steep section of the property. Our overall goal is to address accessibility site-wide. So we'll have some new construction units. We'll have renovation areas where it is possible that are flatter to make those accessible routes to parking possible. We will be exploring all of those. But in this first phase, we do not have any accessible units.
Betty, any follow-up or questions?
Nope, I'm fine, but I will want to know ultimately what the percentage of wheelchair location, apartments are going to be throughout the entire property.
Yeah, so and just to answer that quickly, we're targeting 5% across all of Barcroft.
More than double the minimum. Good. Linda, and then Michelle, you still got your hand up, so we'll circle back to you if you do have a question. If not, let's see if you drop it while Linda speaks. Linda, back to you, please.
Okay, I have a question about on-street parking on George Mason. The reason why I'm asking is because I commented, the comment period stops on Sunday for the George Mason Drive effort, all the enhancements to the road. And in looking at the drawings that they had available, it looked like they were removing on-street parking from George Mason Drive. And I couldn't tell if they were just not going into that level of detail on the drawings. And I definitely commented as part of the formal county feedback process asking, are you eliminating on-street parking? Because I was hoping the answer would be no, that's not being eliminated on George Mason Drive. So that's my question for you all. And have you been I assume you've been fully a party to what the county's been doing on George Mason Drive.
All right, so Linda, I doubt that Olivia or Matt are prepared to answer that question, but I hope maybe they are, because we don't have anyone from DES staff on the line, I don't think. Olivia or Matt, do either of you capable of answering that? Because Linda, the control of the parking in this area, the right of way is owned by the county, so the applicant doesn't have control. It depends on exactly where, but basically they don't have control over it. So it's a question to county staff. Olivia, Matt, you online? Can you help?
Hi, Linda. Could you mind repeating the question?
Yeah, in terms of we're submitting comments to the county's project on improving George Mason Drive, starting with Arlington Boulevard all the way down to the county line. And the segment that includes Barcroft Apartments, in looking at the drawings that were available for us to comment on, it looked like, but I couldn't tell if they were just at a higher level of detail. It looked like they might be recommending eliminating on-street parking on your stretch of George Mason Drive. And my comment to the county for the George Mason Drive process was, please do not eliminate street parking along that stretch, because they are recommending eliminating street parking in other sections of George Mason. So that's why I was wondering how involved you all had been with this effort, and what was I looking at? Was it just at too high a level, or indeed is there a proposal, which I really find pretty concerning, that they possibly could eliminate all the on-street parking along Barcroft Apartments?
Okay, thank you for providing that question. I think Mark will probably be the best person to answer that one.
Yeah, and best to answer, meaning, as Stephen said, I'm not DES, so I can't tell you the details of each segment. Other than that, we've been deeply involved from the staff team and Jair Lynch's team early in the process to provide continued comment. We understand parking is a concern for many residents on the Barcroft site, both on-site and off-site, as well as the commercial vehicle parking, where a lot of the residents use that to store their work vehicles. And so that's an active, ongoing discussion. That process isn't closed. So I'm sure your comments went through, and we'll continue to engage on that. But again, DS is obviously running that process, but very, very much engaged at both the staff and a developer level.
Thank you.
Okay, Linda, any more questions at the moment?
Nope.
Okay, thanks, Linda. Mark, I see your hands back up. Mark?
Great, thanks. Quick question back to the resident meetings. Just confirm, I assume those are multilingual?
Yes, we have a translation. Actually, Alice can probably give specifics, but no, we have all the major languages, and we have translation available at meetings for those residents.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, there was a translators present for any languages requested by residents with little hearing microphone packs and everything. So it was a great system set up for all of the language coverage.
Fantastic. Another question about the renovations for this phase. I've heard You talked about the in-unit washer and dryer. I also heard something about renovated kitchens and bathrooms. But if I look at slide 12, I don't see any of those items mentioned on the proposed renovations and additions. Are those included in this phase or no?
Mr. Hughes, I could take that one, and David can chime in as well. But the list on page 12 is all of the exterior renovations and repairs that we're doing. This form-based code use permit is necessary to permit the exterior additions and renovations. The interior will be subject to building permits. So all of those that you mentioned, those are occurring with this phase. You're not seeing them in this application because the form-based code doesn't require us to submit the interiors, just the exteriors. David, I don't know if you want to say a little bit more about that.
Okay, that makes sense to me. However, windows are not being replaced.
So I can take that. On the Barcroft property, the previous owner had started a window replacement program that had done different parts of the site. For this section, all of the main windows have been replaced already. The windows we're talking about that still need to be replaced are really the basement windows. There's some small steel windows, but all the unit windows have already been replaced on this section.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you for that. And then finally, you mentioned for this phase, any residents that need to be relocated will be relocated on property. Is the assumption or the plan that as you get into other phases and are renovating other parts of the property, that relocation will be done on property if people need to be relocated?
Yes, and any relocation throughout the entire program will be on site.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. And I guess I would just reiterate, given that I walk down George Mason on a semi-regular basis, if that parking goes away for those residents, that would be huge, because that George Mason is parked from the part I walk all the way to 4 Mile Run, bumper to bumper. So anyhow, okay, thank you. Appreciate you taking the questions.
Thanks, Mark. And back over here. I don't see any other hands up, so barring any more hands coming up, we will let our applicant team from Jared Lynch and Lauren and everyone go on about their day, knowing that they will come back to see us after seeing the HLRB and receiving their comments and any changes that HLRB encourages them to make. With that, anybody else going once, going twice? All right. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, David. Thank you, the whole team there from Jared Lynch and everyone for showing up this evening.
Thanks, everyone.
With Olivia, I know you've got an update for us on development proposal statuses and a work plan for the year. The meetings folks have to look forward to that don't involve me.
I do. Well, first I did want to introduce myself. My name's Olivia Sontag. I'm a planner within CPHD, and I've worked on the current planning side of things for the last 3 years, and recently made the switch over, and I'm now the Columbia Pike coordinator, and now the staff liaison to the OG, stepping in for Matt Matuzik. So you'll still see Matt here and there at these meetings, but you'll probably see me more often. And then I did also just want to thank Commissioner Hughes for all of his service. We're certainly going to miss his leadership, but I'm happy to welcome Daniel Weir, and I'm looking forward to working with him. So I'm assuming everyone can see my screen here. So we just had our Barcroft status update. I am going to just give a brief update on kind of the development proposal status that we have at least in front of us right now, and just some of our tentative work plan items for the year. It's already proving to be a pretty busy year. So we just wanted to take some time to briefly cover these updates, but just know that we'll be providing some more updates on when you'll be seeing a lot of these items in the next meeting or two to come. So just to give you guys a brief update on some of the completed projects and some of the recently approved projects. The newest one to note here is the near complete construction of the Arlington View Terrace site. And then the Bank of America site at 3401 Columbia Pike was the most recent form-based code application approved by the county board, I believe back in February. And then currently, you'll see highlighted in purple here, these 3 purple sites are the 3 development proposals that are currently under review with the county, all kind of on the eastern half of the pike. And this includes the 1001 Glebe Road, which is the site of the Exxon station, 2801 Columbia Pike, which is the frame shop location, and then the Arlington View Terrace Phase 2. So just to give you a brief update, again, you'll be getting more detailed updates in the months to come when these are ready to be reviewed by the OG. But this, the first preliminary submission was submitted to the county in March, and staff's currently reviewing the proposal from AHC. At this time, no modifications are being requested or have been identified, so this is currently tracking as a by right proposal, very similar to the first phase of Arlington View Terrace. The proposals for a 3 and 4 story residential buildings, it kind of, you can see they taper, they start at 3 stories further north and taper up to 4 stories. But it totals 78 committed affordable units at 60% AMI for 30 years. And then I just wanted to point out too, the sites do about the Army Navy Country Club on the west and the south end. And there is an RPA that kind of jogs around the corner of the southwest corner of the site. So again, we're continuing to review this submission, and the OG will see this later this year. And then the next item, this is in its second preliminary submission and was submitted to the county in April. It's located right fronting Columbia Pike. This is the frame shop. And then Walter Reed here on the west side. So this is a within the commercial form-based code. We're looking at a special exception use permit, as we know that modifications are likely. This was just submitted a couple weeks ago, so we're still beginning our review of the proposal, but right now we're looking at a 6-story mixed-use building with ground floor retail and residential above, about 75 total units at market rate. They are preserving the historic facade, so this one will be going to the HLRB in the later portion of the year. And then we're also looking at a transit stop on Columbia Pike and a bus stop on Walter Reed Drive. And then lastly, this one has not been officially submitted yet, but we have been kind of in early stages of review with the applicant. It's the Exxon gas station located at 1001 Glebe Road on the corner of Columbia Pike and Glebe. So again, in the commercial form-based code, we're looking at likely a special exception use permit. Again, modifications are likely. 6-story mixed-use building, ground floor retail, residential above. We still do not know the total number of units being proposed, but we're looking at the 6-story development up north here. And then south of this proposed new segment of 11th Street, they are proposing some townhomes. Again, that number is not quite known yet as they're still finalizing some of these items. And then for our tentative work plan, one item that the county board has been flagging for us is exploring the LEED or green building requirements for the commercial form-based code. We do currently have these requirements in our neighborhoods form-based code, which requires LEED silver. So we're in very, very early discussions with staff in DES just to look at, to start scoping out this work. The second item that we'll continue to see on county board agendas in the coming months are some of these commercial resiliency efforts, different amendments to the zoning ordinance and the form-based codes. So these are kind of ongoing amendments that AED staff are bringing to the county board. And then later this year as well, we're also trying to update our administrative regulations in 4.1.2, following all of the updates to the site plan admin regulations. So that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to take questions.
Yep. So I do want to make sure, first of all, Olivia, I apologize for not for forgetting it's your first meeting. I've seen you in so many roles in the planning staff over the couple of years. It was my bad. So I apologize. And for those of you who don't know, you are going to be in fabulous hands with Olivia, and Matt's always in the wings, of course. And so she is going to be a great addition to the Pike as far as moving us forward and continuing with this development proposals. Secondly, I want to make sure everyone knows the comment on the zoning administrations. So to date, the county board has been on a commercial resiliency plan for modifying the zoning code to encourage uses. So if you remember 2 or 3 years ago, the Pike was kind of a leading edge area where they first tested this with a very intensive engagement plan. And we saw lots of proposals inside of our use category table. That has spread throughout the county, and the county is now uniformly adjusting the use table across all zoning districts, more or less, as we move forward to encourage these extra retail uses. So the Pike has not been treated any differently than the rest of the county when it comes to those areas of use categories. So I just want to make sure that everyone knew that was out there. That's been my guiding principle until the Cat Cafe comes up as the actual use category table. I've continued to take the principle that our guiding light has been the public conversations we've had many times in the OG has been mostly about expanding the uses and creating retail opportunities. With that, we see questions are up. I saw Ed had his hand up, so feel free to ask Ed. But first, Daniel, I see your hands up as well. Daniel, Commissioner Ware.
So a comment and then 2 questions. The comment, and I'm going to put the link to this in the chat. This isn't, I guess it's too late for the Barcroft related staff that are here, but for the members of the OG who asked the question, it appears that the proposed preferred concept for segment 2 of the George Mason Drive multimodal study. Segment 2 is the segment that abuts Barcroft Apartments. The proposed concept does not remove parking, or at least the very high level. This is all, like they haven't even gotten into actual schematics yet. But what has been presented makes changes by narrowing down the median. Those of you who have walked that area or drive it frequently know that the median there is about as wide as a pickleball court is long. So that's that. I'll put a link in the chat. Olivia, thank you for your presentation. 2 questions. The first has to do, well, I don't remember the first. The second has to do with the the frame shop is the first question. Maybe you can put the slides back up, and maybe this is just an illustrative slide, but I counted 7 stories, or that is the tallest podium I've ever seen. Could you reconcile that for me?
I may ask Matt to jump in here because he has been reviewing this proposal up to this point, but let me share my screen.
Very good eye, Daniel. It is 7 stories. I'll save everybody the eye squinting. The reason you're seeing 7 is that in this case, you are looking at what we can theoretically call a 2-story podium, which is essentially going to be bringing back the existing 2 floors of the commercial and office space to this project, above which you will still have 5 residential floors above. In the commercial form-based code, there is a provision, other than the Holstead project, which is the first one we had. I'm not sure it's been really utilized again, but it does have a statement that in exchange for historic preservation, an applicant has the ability to earn up to 2 additional stories in height and building height, which is proportional or in recognition of the level of preservation that's happening there. So we've typically not executed that for simple facade preservation, But looking at how much of this structure would need to be returned in place, I think an additional story is certainly something that the county board will consider. But it is in total 7 stories.
I mean, preserving this facade, that's a big deal, right? And that's your note about usually don't is well taken, right? Like this is a big one. So okay, so it would be a 5/2 basically is what it would end up being built as, is on the current trajectory. Is that right?
Yeah, and just as a comparison, back in 2016, when we considered the Rappahannock Coffee site from BM Smith, they were actually in a very similar position because some facades were being preserved and brought back into that development. In theory, they could have tried to make a case for a 7-story there, but I think given how shallow that site was and how little preservation was, I think, occurring with the limited facades there, I think through discussions with staff, they elected not to pursue that. I think in this case, the site is so small, every floor becomes critical to making this very small project feasible.
The adjacent building situation is a little different too. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Olivia. As far as the gas station site is concerned, is there any? I guess this is a 2-part question. The first is, please correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that taken together, the various trusts and interests, that the people who the entities that own the empty single family lot to the south of this are related entities to the entities that own this parcel. Is that correct, to the best of your knowledge?
Thus
Matt, do you know?
far, I have not been made aware that whoever owns the parcel outside of the revitalization district to the south, closer to 12th Street, has the same ownership as the Exxon gas station.
Well, related entities is doing a lot of work there, but I could be wrong, and that's fine. Even the question that the concern that I have is that the townhouses and you point out that it might be outside of the district, and that sure, I don't know, I there might not be a way to do this, but it would sure be nice if there's a way to think more holistically about how this site fits into that large vacant parcel, in a way other than just putting some townhouses next to it that preclude any sort of consolidation. But that might not be feasible, and it might be a short conversation about whether there's a way to do that. And that's it. I'm gonna yield and go off camera.
Okay. Daniel, I'm gonna say Ed, then Linda, then Michelle. Ed.
Okay. Well, first of all, Olivia, welcome to the club. We've been at this for many years. We've heard many proposals. I'm sure this is going to be a welcome addition to everybody to be working with us now. I wanted to ask about the 1001 Glebe Road Exxon gas station. And you mentioned what says on the plan that 11th Street is going to be put into place. Is that true?
Yes, that's the current proposal. With this, it would only install this portion of 11th Street, and it would be up to redevelopment further on to complete the remainder of that. So they've been working with the fire marshal to make sure that there's enough turnaround, which is why they've proposed the entrance, the alley, to be right here.
Okay, that is my concern. That because this goes through Highland Street, goes right past Ashland, and I'm hoping that eventually we can have 11th Street actually be a through street. But I'd like to say, I guess we have to wait until development comes along.
Yeah,
that's.
Yep. It'll be there one day, Ed. The plan just takes many decades. Well, I'll have a cane by the time I can walk down 11th Street all the way. I can tell you that.
In the new urban street. Okay.
Linda, then Michelle, then back to Daniel. Looks like he's got his hand back up. And Ed. Okay, thank you. Linda?
Yeah, for Ed, yes, we always knew that 11th Street east of Glebe was going to be in pieces. Part of it was delivered with Axamite off of Highland, and yeah, it's going to be one chunk at a time. My question about the townhouses on the south side of 11th Street, in the conversations that you've had, do these townhouses back up to what is that currently vacant lot that fronts on 12th Street, or are some of these townhouses going to back up to the backside of single-family homes that are on the north side of 12th Street?
So the property line right here backs up to those backyards of those single family homes. And that is also the edge of the commercial form-based code.
Correct. Yeah, we did this very deliberately in Douglas Park. We had a lot of discussion about extending the boundary down to include the north side of 12th Street. And so that's why this is a little bit of an oddity in the entire code when you look up and down Columbia Pike. That was a very deliberate decision not to include the north side of 12th Street. So I'm sure you and everyone else will be very cognizant of what happens to the backside of the townhouses vis-a-vis backing up to single family homes. That's my only comment. Thank you.
Thanks, Linda. Michelle, circling back to Daniel, if he still has another follow-up.
This is small. I just have one comment and one question. The comment is, I'm just letting you know that everyone in my neighborhood is very concerned about the pie shop, and I keep hearing about it over and over. So I'm just gonna. And then I actually have a question, not about these, but in terms of your updates on projects, if you can give an update on the Elliott and maybe a short update. The Cliff Notes is they came to our civic association last night, so I'm just sort of curious about the staff perspective.
So the latest we've heard on the Elliott is that they are currently looking for smaller retail tenants for that ground floor use, and that the grocery store is no longer part of their plan for the retail spaces.
Did I answer it, Michelle?
Yeah, do you know, I don't know to what degree DPD or planning staff have been involved in the last night they were talking about how they've been looking for some like interim pop-up uses and talking to lots of people at the county about that. And so maybe you don't have more information than what they did last night. I was just curious. Thanks.
Yeah, it sounds like you have probably more recent information than we do. But I'm sure I see Amy.
Amy, did you have more you wanted to add to that immediate conversation? I see her, Amy from CPRO or CPP. Don't.
It's all good, Stephen. We've been talking with the folks with Insight Properties and Scott Management and Fillmore Gardens and the Fillmore people. That is what they're interested in doing. They realize that their timeline has gotten pushed because of the loss of that major tenant. And they've asked us to see if we can find folks who'd be interested in a pop-up type of situation there, knowing it's going to be very short term, year and a half, 2 year. So that is a discussion that's moving forward, and we're going to continue to try to help them find situations that work in that space. And I think they're realizing that, being in the community, they don't want it to look like nobody's home, right? So, this is a fluid situation, and we're going to continue to do what we can to support making that block that used to be our home, not be a detriment to the community.
I will say that we've had very early conversations with the applicant, and just to talk about what that process would look like, and likely just an admin change. So,
you good, Michelle?
Yeah, thanks.
Daniel, is your hand still back up?
it would be, I'd hate to have another Trafalgar Flats situation, but even if there are different reasons, mostly just for Ed's benefit, to note that 11th Street is and remains a part of the master transportation plan. So, I don't, apologies if you already know this, right? But official county planning policy is that 11th Street be built out from Highland to Glebe. We plan in decades, but the county does now have direct control over a significant portion of that street, of course, in the form of the bank. The back of the parking lot is a major component of 11th. The bad news to that, right, is that the plan didn't anticipate my daughter's preschool from occupying those 3 single-family houses, which will, if the portion of 11th Street from Highland to the part that the county just bought is a rectangle, then there's a triangle that Axumite delivered, and then the corresponding triangle that is off the table for however many decades until Meta Montessori decides to do whatever it is they do. So Stephen's not wrong. We'll both be wearing canes, and Stephen's, in my case, maybe will be the reason each other are wearing canes. But that's it's on the policy, and it's like one of the few things that I actually am confident will happen eventually when it comes to county planning. That's all.
Thanks, Daniel, for that reassuring comment that 11th Street one day will exist. Those mysterious 11th and 12th one day might form a more fun.
I think it's worth noting though that like it's on the MTP for a reason, right? And that's that like an urban style building doesn't work between Columbia Pike and 11th if 11th isn't built out, right? Because you don't get an activated streetscape on the long quarter of an expensive to build building. So it's there for reasons.
Thanks, Daniel. And Olivia, did you sneak in your work plan inside of your presentation? So you got 2 birds with 1 stone? You don't have a separate work plan presentation tonight, do you?
Nope, we already snuck that in.
You did a 2 bird with 1 stone sort of conversation. So with that, I do think we've reached the end of this meeting. So unless I see more questions out there, it's been a pleasure serving with all of you for 7 years. I know you'll be in great hands. Olivia will be fantastic, and Daniel will be fantastic as well. And I look forward.
Olivia will be fantastic. I'm not making any promises.
I don't.
We're in this together, Daniel.
I don't make any promises about Daniel, but Olivia, I can promise she will be fantastic. And of course, Matt is never too far away. We are the drip he cannot let go of, and he's always in the wings, hanging out behind us somewhere. So with that, unless we have any more questions out there, I'll give everyone their evening back and 23 minutes of your time, and I'll see you guys around the pike. That's the best way to say it. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you,
Stephen.
It's been a long ride.
Thank you.
Good.